All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So you will forgive us if this is a little clunky or if we have any issues, but we we took a bit of an unplanned hiatus for a year, and as I was starting to dig into why we did that and what all that meant, I realized that we did 47 episodes in a year, and that was our first year. So we're not going to do that again. And if you're looking for any reason why running a podcast by yourself, producing it as a independent entity without a whole bunch of team and staff, there it is. It's a fair amount of work. It's a surprising amount of work. So we're going to take, for this second season, it feels odd calling it a season, but for this second season, we're going to take a much more conservative approach. The intent right now, seeing as this is the second season premiere, is to release 12 core episodes in 2025, one a month. That's very doable. So if we don't do that, then shame on us, but that is very doable. And
Realistic.
also, I think we have to set smart goals, don't we? But the intent is to also give us some more time to work on some more out-of-the-box things that we've been wanting to do for a while and just haven't had the time or the motivation or the brain power. So doing the 12 core episodes, that's sort of our traditional, the stuff you're used to. That's the meat and potatoes. But the other things, I've got one that's in the pipeline that should be coming in January as well that I think you'll find really interesting. We're going to branch out a little bit into what it truly means to be plays well with others. We're not just the organizational leadership shtick. That horse has been beaten at least 47 times and she's dead. We're going to try to dig more into the hard-hitting topics you expect from your news provider. No, we're going to try to dig into something that's a little more meaty, so to speak. So, without further ado, digging into this first episode, the more that I've hashed through this, and we planned the topic, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, something like that. And I've been going back and forth on how to approach it. And there could be some touchy topics or touchy subjects. None of this is meant to be disparaging at all or anything. We can only bring our perspective. And that's what it is. It's the best we got is our stuff. So today we're going to talk about the role and the impact of AI in post-secondary education, I think is what you call it, but basically anything outside of after high school in the United States. Because the primary impetus for this is ChatGPT, LLMs, quote-unquote AI has taken off like gangbusters. It's been a thing for a while, but it's taken off like crazy in 2024. And I expect it to continue to grow. And the question that I had was, as more specifically developers, because remember, software engineering VP here, but as developers take more time out of their day using ChatGPT, using Microsoft Copilot, using Gemini, whatever they are, as they're using these models to accomplish kind of the mundane, what does that do for the junior developer? And what does the role of the bootcamp become? So I want to start there. And I think the best way for me to hand it off or to make this into a conversation would be to just start by some stats on boot camps. What are boot camps and where does that fit in this conversation? Why am I even bringing it up? So first off, a boot camp is meant to upskill or reskill. So it's kind of like an accelerated certificate program for technical folks. You kind of think of it like a 6-month certificate type program. You go in, you learn very quickly how to do various different things, and you come out with a certification that says, I can develop in the mean stack or the MERN stack or whatever it is. So you learn your particular area, and then you go get a job on that. And they have grown drastically in 5 years. think a lot of that is because of COVID. We needed more remote learning skill or more remote learning capabilities, but also we've had this conversation of automation and computers are going to take your jobs. And so I think there's a lot of fear that drives people towards development, which, motivations aside, I'm not against anybody turning to development because I think it's pretty cool. But I think that's been the large driver. But I found the metric in 5 years. So since 2021, these boot camps, in terms of participant count, they've grown about 30% year over year. And that's growing up to, in 2024, there have been over 300,000 participants in a technical boot camp program this year, or last year now, which is pretty incredible. But they're also expecting this growth pattern to continue. And they're looking at, I say they, I'll cite my sources in this show notes, but the article I found said that they're expecting this growth pattern to continue, and it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry by 2030, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's its own university system, almost
right,
almost a trade school version, right?
Right, and the other caveat is this is 100% not a blanket support of the United States industrial university complex at all. But I do have one of those degrees for whatever it's worth. But
you're never going to catch me being mad about people getting as much liberal education as they can afford.
That's fair. And I think that's why this is going to be a fun topic, because we may have vastly different opinions on the topic. I'm excited. I have missed this, by the way.
Arguing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's lower stakes arguing because it's on the mic.
Can only go so far, I guess.
Yeah. That was episode 48. You'll never see that one. I kind of want that to be an inside joke now. It wasn't actually that bad, but
there was an episode 48.
There was an episode 48.
Not for you guys.
No. It exists within the vault. You've gotten 2 clips. That's all you'll ever see.
Oh.
But no, so like, what are your thoughts? Because the one topic that keeps coming to mind, I used my liberal arts degree one time. I got my first job, and then that was it. By and large, the stuff that I learned in university and college, I don't pull out very often. And mostly when I do pull it out, it's like at a dinner party, and it's arts and Western civilization. It's not computer science. Can't tell you the one time I've used Dijkstra's algorithm or, frankly, binary coded decimals. It's not a thing that comes out very often.
You know, that's interesting, because what you're talking about are specific things that you've learned in college. What I'm thinking of in terms of why it's a good investment is not that specific algorithm that you learned, or that specific formula, or that specific thing. It's the broadening of your worldview. So you're forced to, at least in the college experience I had, and anthropology and communication, there's a lot of broadening of horizons introduced to concepts that were not in my high school curriculum, forcing me to kind of reevaluate expectations or thought patterns that I had. The second one would be the critical thinking skills that you learn as you go forward. Because it's not, at least in my personal experience, it wasn't just you learn facts and data. It was a lot less memorization and a lot more learning how to think, almost, right? How to analyze data, how to identify a good source. And that, I think, is a big problem in a lot of people who haven't.
Now.
Yeah, a lot of people who haven't had the opportunity to go to college. Sometimes it's difficult to identify where's a good source of information. What criteria do I use to identify a source of information that can be trusted? When, especially in the culture we're in right now, the misinformation that floats around. And I'm not going to dive into anything specific, but I think it's a good ability to be able to have that capability to analyze data and identify what might be true and what might not be. So there's a lot, I think, that you take away from growth as a human from a college experience.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do think that your mileage may vary because comparatively, I did not go to Texas A&M. I went to, I won't say uber conservative, but fairly high on the conservative scale, private Baptist college. So not a ton of expanding of worldviews going on there.
Right. And I had the opportunity to study abroad as well. I mean, that's not something everybody is going to have the opportunity to do. So it definitely is. And here's the thing, college isn't the only place you can learn those skills either. So that's not the only place. Travel can have almost the same impact from a worldview expanding. You don't have to go to any school. Forcing yourself to, live life in different scenarios, not just one place in life, your whole, expanse of time, that can have the same impact. So there's a lot you can do to gain that experience and gain that insight outside of college, and for a lot cheaper potentially. Maybe even traveling the world is cheaper. I don't know.
It very much depends on where you go, but I can tell you I could have gone a lot of places on my tuition. And but I do agree. And I think a lot of it comes down to personal experience and personal drive, which is why, and this kind of leads us into the boot camp part of the topic. I think that by and large, when we talk about folks going to boot camp, and I don't have the metrics on this, so I apologize, but I think the folks that are going to boot camps aren't using those as a replacement for college. I think they're kind of in the position where either they went down one path, whether they went to a university or not, they went down a path and are looking to get into a new path. Because I've talked to multiple people over the years that, they started out as an accountant, or, I had somebody that worked with me that was a roof inspector, and then he went to a boot camp and now he's a AVP at a mortgage company. I think he may have moved since, but either way,
I know someone who was a nurse and now they're a data engineer. I mean,
right.
there's there's a lot of benefit, I think, in doing that sort of thing as well. And especially when people find out when they're a little older what they're actually good at and what they actually enjoy. That happened to me. I mean, my work that I'm doing now is nothing that I thought I would be doing all those years ago.
Yeah, as it turns out, an 18-year-old isn't great at making life-altering decisions.
Who let 18-year-old me pick a major? I don't know.
But I think the point stands. You can approach a boot camp from a perspective of, hey, I've graduated high school and I want to get into tech and I don't want to go to a 2-year program or a 4-year program. Fair enough. The numbers prove it. It works. We've gotten to a point where we can very quickly train, hire, and field technical people going through this process. And some of the best developers that have ever worked with me are from boot camps. So 100% we can't disagree that boot camps work.
Well, I think we've maybe seen also some fresh out of college individuals who come into companies and they've started doing work in decades old system that had 50 people adding their own personal touches into it, spaghetti coding the back end to the nth degree. And that little fresh out of college developers realizing that their hands-on experience is very different than the lab that they did in their computer science program. So, there's definitely something to be said for treating development, at least in some degree, like a journeyman type, apprentice implementation sort of model. I think that's why the junior senior dev model is so common, because of that.
I think you may have unintentionally made a different point there too. And that is that vastly more educated people can make vastly worse decisions than you. And anyone that has worked in a legacy code base can agree. There's something unique about big code bases that inevitably turn to bad decisions. But but what I'm wondering though is we have and we're going to hone in a little bit on the developer boot camp ecosystem or industry, particularly because that's where I have expertise. But you mentioned the junior senior paradigm. I am a product of the junior senior paradigm. You start out as a junior developer and you do the mundane work that nobody wants to do and that the corporate system has determined is limited risk. You can't screw this up bad enough, right? And some of that, it's like, I want this field over here. I want it rotated 90 degrees. I want it green, and I want a button beside it. What does the button do? Doesn't matter. It's got a button. Cool. And you do that 20 times a day for a year and a half, and then you've been deemed safe enough to become a full boat software engineer or a full boat developer. And then you do that for a couple of years, and then, hey, you're a senior now. You can make decisions, which is fine. But, this has come from over the last 3 months. I've had a developer working for me that came in and has been very open about the fact that he uses Copilot and ChatGPT on a fairly regular basis to accomplish tasks. And the dude has developed a solid platform, a solid product that I've attempted to rewrite with a team before, took 3 months and made no progress. Now we almost have a fully operational product that I have slated for Q2 to release for next year, and it's almost done. And I'll be gone for 2 weeks on vacation at the end of December when we're recording this. So I'll be out of his way, which probably tells me that it'll be done by the time I get back.
So I just want to mention something here because you sent me the topic for this and I was doing some research, and it was really funny because there was one side of the house that was like, AI is going to kill junior devs. They're not going to need junior devs anymore. You're only going to need senior devs. You're only going to need the people who can do machine learning and integrations between systems. That's it. That's all you're going to need. And there was another side of the house that was like, no, this is going to kill needing senior devs because actually, AI has come in the reverse of the direction we thought it was going to. It's not taking the small mundane jobs, it's taking the creative jobs. So you're not going to need a senior dev anymore. Your junior dev's going to be able to ask AI to do the important stuff, which I'm not saying I agree with that by any means,
thoughts.
just to be very clear. until AI can draw a hand that doesn't look like it's from the pit fires of Hades, I'm not going to trust it to do senior dev work, but that's a different story. But what I think you just did there is you kind of introduced a third, and I think better, like model of what the AI world is going to do to development. It's going to mean that a developer at whatever spectrum they're at can be more efficient because they now have an army at their disposal that they can, be the puppet master and control to do the things that they need to do. And I love that idea. And I think that is, in my opinion, the best. What does the future look like with AI and development that I've heard?
So this is where this gets really, really nuanced, and some things I like about it, and some things I don't. But the comment that this particular developer has made is that, man, I'm a senior dev with 20 plus years of experience, and I'm using Copilot effectively. I'm using ChatGPT effectively, and most days it feels more like I'm a technical BA than a developer because I'm spending time thinking about what is it that I need than I am talking about code and structure. And I think that's a really fair point because I did the same thing. I admittedly, as much as I am an innovative technician or technologist, I have not used ChatGPT or any other LLM as much as I should. So I've made a considered effort over the last 6 weeks to use it for more things. And I have a platform running on my desktop at home that allows me to run my own private models. So nothing leaks, nothing goes anywhere. Super cool. But that's outside of the scope of this particular topic. But I've started, as need comes up, and a lot of times it does. Hey, I need a script to do XYZ. Typically, I would sit down in 30, 45 minutes. I'd bang it out, test it, run it, be done with it. But I just decided to start asking my local LLM, like, hey, I need a Python script that takes a file of this format, transforms these columns, spits it out into this format, and shoves it over here. And dang it, if it's not really good, it in some cases, some use cases, it spits out the perfect thing, the right thing the first time. Other cases, it gets really close, and I just have to say, hey, I got this exception on this line number. And it says, oops, here it is. Here's the fix, which is really nice. It does take a lot of the enjoyment of coding out of it, which is mostly why I do it, but it's really dang effective. So I think I definitely fall more on the side of maybe junior developer titles need to be reconsidered a bit. Not saying junior devs are going away.
Maybe your junior devs become junior dev / business analyst, and their job is to do some of that, writing of technical requirements. I mean, there's definitely an opening there, and that would make a good senior dev.
Yeah.
A senior dev that's really good at understanding and consuming and writing out requirements.
There are, and we've said it time and time again in the last 47 episodes, that the best developers are ones that can develop their own requirements and can understand the business problem. But here's the crux of the question. So if we're talking about the role of the junior dev in a post-ChatGPT world where suddenly I can ask for any framework, I can ask for any programming language, I can ask for anything that I need that's really kind of simple or straightforward, what do we then train? So if you look at two sides, in my computer science degree, I left that 4 years with a fairly round awareness of a lot of things, and I knew how to write Java code. That's about it. And I'm oversimplifying, but you get the picture. With a boot camp, you leave that boot camp knowing how to write JS code or Python code or whatever the particular flavor is. And you enter the workforce as a junior dev. You know how to write code, but you don't know how to work in an enterprise environment, in a huge code base, in a pre-existing code base. You may or may not know how to work in an agile environment. You may or may not know that particular framework or even how to pivot frameworks. That comes with experience. And I'm painting with a broad brush, I know it, but there may be some programs that are better than others at doing this. But so what do we then prioritize in the education world so that a developer is super successful day one? Back from technical difficulties break. What I was going to is, so we have junior developers, whether they come from boot camps or universities, that by and large have a skill set, but they don't have the experience to know how to use that skill set in an environment. And I'm painting with a broad brush because some programs are better than others. For example, I was always jealous of my buddy who went to Vanderbilt, and day one, they taught him how to use source control. And here I went through my 4 years emailing zip files .bak broken, but I fixed it. .older, etc. until 4 a.m.
Oh, geez.
But what do we do about that? And do we do anything? Because I think that the important part and why we're covering this topic here is that not as educators, as hiring managers, things are different now. Things are getting shook up.
Yeah. So you're talking about the same problem that honestly blue collar jobs have, right? You have a skill, but you don't know how to build an entire house. You don't know how you fit into the orchestration of all of the different skills that have to be combined together in order to get the desired outcome. So it's a very interesting it's a very interesting dichotomy there. And actually, you sent me an article about is programming a blue collar job, which is very funny and kind of perfect to tie into this. But yeah, there's definitely something there of yes, that's what a trade school is. You learn a skill, and then how do you mesh it into the larger orchestration?
Yeah, I totally did send you that. And I thought that was kind of the core topic of discussion, and it just didn't come back up naturally. But yeah, the we were worried. I'll say worried. I think that's a reasonable way to put it. But it was like back in 2013, 2014, there was this article that came out, and maybe it wasn't a single article, and maybe it was a generalized feeling or generalized opinion, but there was this concept or this topic that said software development is becoming another blue collar job. And there were kind of two camps on that. One was, no, I'm offended. This isn't blue collar. I'm a professional. I went to school for this. And then there was the other, which was, no, yeah, that makes total sense because I'm having to hire a boatload of professionals to support kind of repetitive work. So now how do we adjust this, or how do we right size this? And fast forward to, I mean, it was definitely before now, but if you look at how we staff for software engineering these days, there is a lot of work that's being done by software. So if you think about keeping libraries up to date, all that's automated for us. Like we get the pull request open, we review it and we approve it, and off she goes. Or maybe you're nearshoring or offshoring. Yeah, that's a component for kind of the repetitive maintenance stuff. And maybe you leave your onshore to be engaged with the business. And this is driving back to your point, Jess, of maybe developers should get closer to the business problem rather than becoming highly technical specialists. Yeah, that's part of what this is. But I think this does develop into a similar conversation around AI, because we make these polarizing statements of development's becoming a blue collar job and this isn't professional and blah, blah, blah. And then you fast forward and turns out there's degrees of truth, and AI is going to take all our jobs. Fast forward, there's probably a degree of truth. Like we're not going to staff individuals to do new field type maintenance. We're just going to put that onto an existing developer and take 10 minutes, or crap, maybe that's part of the next automation, CI/CD. You just spit in the ticket that's in LLM language or prompt language, and then it gives you a PR and you review it.
You know, at the beginning of that article we were talking about, the guy had the similar reaction that you had, or that you mentioned, you know, that he was kind of offended by the connotation that he was a blue collar worker. And he had this thought of like, oh, in the future, are they going to look back at me and think of me like a factory worker from the Industrial Revolution, one, you know, cog in the wheel of this massive mechanism that produced all of this technological landscape that we live in nowadays. So he was kind of like pontificating on what the future might look like, right? So when you really think about it, there is a parallel though between kind of a factory worker during that era and a programmer now, not in the level of, you know, professionalism of the role, but in the shift that's going to occur because of technology. So the factory workers from the Industrial Revolution were often replaced by robotics that would take over their very repetitive single task roles in these factory assembly lines. Similar to how now is AI coming in to take over the, you know, single factor job roles that some of these junior developers might have right now. And I think that gives us a clue to what the future might hold for programmers as well, right? Because factory workers didn't disappear. They evolved.
I think it starts getting very philosophical, and I'm happy about that because we've got plenty of time left. But I think what you're describing is kind of that old adage, a rising tide raises all ships. So in a perfect world, by introducing automation, by introducing, whether it be in factory automation or software automation, AI, you're improving the lives of the people that were doing the roles. I think the expectation, though, and this is where the challenge is introduced, is that the people that automation replace, or the jobs that automation replaces, those individuals then have to upskill to either be the mechanics that work on the robots, or do a role that is next in line for automation.
Well, even
right?
there's similarities to the past, right? Because that robot that just did the one thing now has code sitting behind it, and it has complexities in its creation that change it. So yeah, upskilling is obviously a path you could talk about. And as much as I hate to say this, the person who's doing that one job may not be the person that we're talking about needing to upskill. We might be talking about the workforce in general needs to upskill, right? So in a similar fashion to the robot is changing and evolving, and that needs people to do those back end things, AI is going to change and evolve. Machine learning is going to change and evolve. It's going to, get ever more complicated and complex until eventually the robots take over and we all perish.
Look, I talked about this this morning in my stand-up. I am looking forward to living in a cyberpunk dystopia. Just, I don't think we're going fast enough that I'll make it, but
And
I
for the
think that'll
record,
be
I'm
very
not a
exciting.
threat to you, robots. You can be my overlords. I'm fine with it. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, people need doctors. Robots need
Yeah.
engineers.
Yeah.
You need me. But no, I think that is a key point. And I was having this conversation with somebody else recently when I started developing the topic here. My thinking is that we started out, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but we started out developing engineers in universities, teaching them in a classical way.
Mm-hmm.
And largely that was, how do you think? How do you problem solve? And we accomplished that with varying degrees of success. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. But as that moved forward, and as things like the dot-com bubble came and went, and as we as an industry, as a civilization, developed more legacy code that needed maintaining, we built this pile that had to be addressed. And so there became disproportionately high demand for developers to help work on this stuff. Even you think back to Y2K, suddenly we need all these COBOL developers to help untangle our mess.
Mm-hmm.
So as this demand grows, in comes the Bootcamp or the VOTEC to help fill the demand. And that demand was largely, I need somebody that knows how to write code and can come in and figure it out real quick. And I just need to be able to scale that over and over and over again. With AI, that expands the capacity of existing developers. So maybe that diminishes the demand for call it the parts changing type work, and raises the demand for more engineer work. And so does that circle us back around to the topic of, maybe we are back in the world of, we don't need specific skills, we need generic thought process?
I mean, when you get down to kind of what is a programmer, there's that. A lot of times, a lot of the developers that I've spoken with, yourself included, you almost come across as you're not a specific type of developer, you're a problem solver, right? So you you do the magic behind the scenes. And so there is a certain truth to, it's not necessarily this one skill that you have to do Java development that has made your career what it is. It is your ability to be thrown at a problem and you can solution into something that is vastly superior to what you started with. Now, that might include you doing the coding. That might include you orchestrating a better process. I've seen how you've solved problems without doing a single line of code. So having that skill set in addition to the tools that you're using, these AI, Copilot and ChatGPT, they become just another methodology to solve the problem, right?
It's another tool in the tool belt.
Exactly.
Brings us back to brings us to that principle that I never can remember the name of, but it's effectively when every tool you have is a hammer, everything looks a whole lot like a nail. So that's always the challenge with developers is, don't focus so much on how do I write code to solve this problem. Focus more on how do I solve this problem, and if code happens to be the answer, super. Now that direction does change. I give it differently depending on the organization. Like right now, I've got a handful of developers. That's going to be a vastly different structure and approach than in past lives where I've had 30 developers, right? So if we're in a rigid development shop that we practice agile, but rigid, big, mature development shop, you know what I mean? We're going to focus more on writing code because that's the efficiency. It's not the whole organization isn't built around just needing to run the business. The smaller you get, the more you have to focus more on the ability to pivot and react, which now is, hey, go solve the problem first, come back, let's talk about it. If we can solve it without writing a line of code, that's a lot cheaper than writing a bunch of code and deploying it.
So the answer to does AI, replace development is really kinda, but not really.
I think it is one of those scenarios where you cannot draw a hard line on it. If you do, you're going to have problems. I saw so many people on LinkedIn when ChatGPT first came into prevalence that were screaming to the hilltops, AI is terrible, you should not use it. I'm a tech expert and AI is awful. Don't use it. And there are varying reasons, and I'm overplaying it because it's entertainment, but that was the general sentiment, was like, it's either everything and this is changing our world forever, or it's nothing, is a passing fad, don't worry about it. And all of those people, every single dang one of them, are now back to the middle of, yeah, we should use it, this is cool. And by the way, I'm a consultant if you need help with your AI project. Okay. Just pretend we didn't see that 2 years ago.
But this all kind of leads us back into that, like, well, what's the effect on school, right? Like, do you do a boot camp? Do you do college? And I tend to land back on, do you absolutely need college to become a developer? No. But it can really, really help your career if you have gone through some level of liberal education that's going to teach you to think broader, be more critical in how you dissect information, and to teach you the skills around, even writing more coherently, understanding other perspectives better. All of that information, all that capability will help you in this world of AI, digital, world a lot better than what you would just come out of a boot camp with. So I just don't think you're going to get away from a college education. A liberal college education can be incredibly valuable in your journey.
Again, don't disagree. I think
it's not the only path. I just want to be clear on that. I'm not saying that's the only path. There are other things you can do to get to the same result. But if you're thinking about how am I going to grow a career as a developer when developing might be an ending career, if AI can do all the things I could learn in a boot camp, why do I need to be a developer? Well, there's more to it. And I think having that broader education can help you get to it.
I think perhaps I, I,
Because I'm
I'm
so
coming at
persuasive.
this most likely. I do think I come at this with a lot of skepticism because I think most things in our world deserve a pretty healthy shakeup every few decades. And I think that the vast university complex has gotten out of hand.
Oh my God. Could we
And
do that for our next episode? Because I've got feelings. We're saving for my daughter's education right now. And I
oh
have
mercy.
big feelings. Okay.
Okay, well, we will not play well with others in that episode, I suspect. But that I think a lot of the time people look at college as like I'm either going to go be a executive or I'm going to go be something else. And that's the college decision. And I think fundamentally that's a flawed question even to ask, is like, if the value statement from a university is thought process and experience, I think you said it, I'm not arguing, but
Yeah.
you can do that in so many different ways. And as a society, we have placed this weight on a university education that is a bit classist in nature.
It can
Like if
come
you
across
didn't
that
get to
way.
go to university, then you're not of a certain ilk. And I don't care for that because, again, a lot of the people that I've hired, a lot of the people I've worked with, either had no formal education. So they're the people that taught themselves how to develop. And that's impressive in its own right. Or they're boot camp graduates, or they've got a partial degree or whatever it is. And again, coming at this as an executive, not a educator. So like as a hiring manager, I don't particularly care about your knowledge of, Renaissance art. But those people tend to have more skin in the game, or at least as much skin in the game. We started with this. We decided we were going to do it. We stuck with it. We fought through it. Now here we are, and we're successful. I've got a right to be here.
You just explained exactly what can duplicate that college capability, right? That impassioned, persevering, pushing through and learning mindset. I mean, that's what you're forced into if you go to a university, right? You end up studying until midnight, pushing yourself beyond the bounds of what you thought was possible, downing 20 gallons of coffee so that you can accomplish the thing that you need to accomplish. It's a very stressful, enlightening experience. That doesn't mean that you can't achieve something similar, but it has to be it's honestly more impressive when you do it outside of a university experience because there's no one making you do it in that scenario. You're the one who's pushing your own envelope, who's being curious and dedicated and driving their own growth as a human. Frankly, I think it's wildly impressive the people that have done that and ended up with the same capabilities, the same skill set, if not better, because it was all, hard won. Not that it's not hard won in university. I don't want to underplay the fact that it can be very, very difficult, but definitely hard won in a different sense.
Yeah, I
A
mean,
little bit grittier.
I think your investment in your learning is a lot stronger when you're not in a university setting. I think if you rewind all the way back to the beginning I don't know, Oxford was not the first university, but you get the picture. Rewind to the start. Universities gave an opportunity for you to learn unfettered by daily responsibilities, and you could learn for knowledge's sake.
Yeah.
And when you fast forward into a scenario where we have a framework of 4 years, and after that you get a degree, and that's what allows you to get a job to be successful, you're not necessarily as invested in the learning as you are in getting the piece of paper at the end of the 4 years. And so as an individual who is time boxed, like, hey, I've got a day job. I'm a music producer. I'm a roofing inspector. I'm a welder. I'm a whatever. And I want to be a developer. I want to be a cybersecurity professional, or I want to be whatever. That puts you in a mindset of, I got to learn this as fast as I can learn it. and as good as I can learn it. Because a lot of these boot camps too don't necessarily have programs. Like you're not going to be sitting there for 6 months one way or the other. You complete the curriculum.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. So I mean, there's that side by side. Okay, yeah, you can do it in this path, but it's not the only path to get to the same thing. Through perseverance and curiosity and pushing yourself, you can take a number of boot camps. You can get the skills that you would learn in college, and you can come out of it with that same broader horizon, that same ability to critically think and push yourself that you might have achieved in the same way. So, I mean, yeah, I think that you can achieve the end result in a number of different ways. There's a package and a formula to get it going this route, or you forge your own path.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up for this inaugural season 2 episode. But I think in summary, what we decided is it depends. Which probably should have been the name of this podcast.
It depends.
It depends.
Plays well with others / it depends.
Sometimes. But that's the bit, right? Boot camps work. University works. Everything works. AI is not taking all of our jobs. It will take some of them or some parts of them.
Yeah.
You have to be growth-minded. You have to be forward-thinking. You have to be pragmatic, because otherwise you're just going to be rote repetition, and that's not where anybody wants to be when it comes down to how am I progressing myself. So that's us for today. Some technical difficulties that I will polish up, and now we have to go do other things this evening. So thank you for your time, Jess. It's always a pleasure, and for those of you that tuned back in, thanks for listening.